I want to bring in Sushant Sareen, a well-known strategic affairs analyst, into this discussion here. Sushant, India and the United States are perceived as natural allies, as MJ was just pointing out. It's taken them a while to recognize that they've got common enemies as well. In this particular strategic dialogue that India is currently holding with the US Secretary of State and her delegation, what should and what is India looking for? What should India be looking for?
Look, I think before I come to that, let me just add something to what Mr. Akbar and Ambassador Sen are saying. While everything they've said, I completely agree with it. But there is a certain diffidence, a certain lack of confidence which we seem to display in actually entering into a kind of a strategic relationship with the Americans. Of course, there are a number of reasons for that, not the least of which is the great power differential between the two countries. Again, while we might have common enemies, and I've said this before, the way we wish to tackle those common enemies is probably different, because probably our priorities are different in that context, and our involvement in that context is also very different. So I think we need to keep these differences in mind. Now, as far as what we expect out of the Americans is concerned, I think it's equally important to ask ourselves, how far are we willing to go in this relationship with the Americans? A lot of it, which we hear all the time, is what we want the Americans to do. I don't hear enough of what we are willing to do in turn. And I really wish somebody like Ambassador Sen would cast some light on that it's all very well, we know we want the Americans to pull our chestnuts out of the fire as far as the AFPAC region is concerned. We know we want the Americans to stay on in Afghanistan and clean up the mess out there, which was partly of their making. We know that we want the latest technology and everything else from the Americans. We know we want some kind of an American support in East Asia. We know all that. But what are we willing to do in return? And the moment you come across some kind of a defense agreement, something like that, we suddenly suffer from this major lack of confidence. We feel that, probably the Americans are going to come and take us over.
Okay.
I think we've just not been able to, reach that level where we can say that, look, yes, we are a very self-confident nation and we can deal with the Americans despite all these agreements on our own terms. I sense a certain diffidence out there on our part.
Is there a diffidence, Ambassador Sen, and also a problem of reciprocity, especially perceived from the US side?
No, I think there's actually, I agree with Mr. Sareen. I think there is some diffidence, I would say. I think because of history, and I happen to have been involved in that history. I mentioned Bangladesh. I was at the time in Russia, and when you had this Indo-Soviet treaty being sort of worked on, I refer to the legacy of Nixon, which is very, very seen negatively to the low point during the Bangladesh crisis, evidenced even in our minds, deeply etched in our minds, the US's enterprise in the Bay of Bengal. So that was one aspect. The other aspect we saw is, and I happen to be involved there. I'm not the cause of it, but I just happen to be involved there. When Tarapur, I was at that time in atomic energy. I was secretary to the Atomic Energy Commission at that time, when this Tarapur debate took place, and Carter caught on mic at that time, saying that remember to remind me to send this man a tough and blunt letter, and he was caught on mic saying that. So we've had these low points. Now we have gone beyond that, but this is a natural instinct, not only in nations but individuals. Change is always somehow regarded as something disruptive.